to break the sadness, one neighboring tribe gave him a wife. But as a tourist, we don't expect you to pay.
And no grad trip in Europe either?
Maybe next year.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's go. Ready?
Very ready.
So, hello, Mohammed.
Hello.
Thank you very much for coming and taking part in my interview. So, can
Thank
you
you.
please briefly introduce yourself to the audience?
I am Mohammed. I am from Iraq. I'm 19 years old. I'm a student here at Lipochon UWC. I'd say my interests are mostly in physics and political science, but currently we're going to talk about mostly politics. I
Okay.
think you're into Iraqi physics.
Yeah, true. Before we jump into politics, just let me know your first impressions of Hong Kong and how do you think Hong Kong is different from where you come from? Look
I
at
remember,
yourself.
I still remember my first day in Hong Kong.
You
I don't
do?
know. Yeah. Oh
Okay,
my
okay.
God.
Well, how was it?
It was like it was during the COVID era. It felt so uh, apocalyptic.
Not how
You
you
know,
wish.
you go into the airport and they hold you in this line and people come scan you for diseases and
Yeah, yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Then people in masks just come and take your bag and everything. I know, of course, safety procedures, but it's still, um, it was terrifying. I think my first day in Hong Kong, but
Sure. But
I
then,
I don't think it hit that I'm in Hong Kong at like 2 weeks after when I'm just walking around. Hong Kong is very organized.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes I feel like
true.
it's so it runs like a clock.
Yeah,
Doesn't
yeah, yeah,
miss,
yeah.
like maybe here in LPC we're very,
No, I mean, we're.
yeah, we're very isolated, but I don't feel like I've experienced Hong Kong for 2 years. I feel like I experienced just like the UWC experience for 2 years, but Hong
Mm-hmm,
Kong is very, it's like this wild, this far off idea in the island that's like an hour away.
true. No, that.
So I'd say I want to really experience Hong Kong the next week before I leave. But
Yeah, last week.
I feel like, yeah, I feel like now it's too late. But Hong Kong is very, it's a lot different. People here are not passionate about politics at all. At least not as much.
Right.
Maybe coming from a very politically active area, people are more. People have a lot of opinions about
Right.
everything. Everyone talks about politics,
Right.
even when it's unsafe. But people here, it's like hush hush, don't talk about
Mm-hmm,
this and
mm-hmm,
this and
mm-hmm.
this and that.
So yeah, it's kind of.
So yeah, it's more muted.
Mm-hmm,
It
true.
feels like people are people don't want to talk about anything.
True.
Yeah.
True. So yeah, okay. If we started about politics, so you being global politics student in our school, you know better than anyone else about the political structure in Iraq.
Yeah.
So tell us about it. Give us some context. What is
That's
happening?
Carl.
You know a
Yeah,
lot
that's the
about that.
guy. Yeah. Um, Political structure of Iraq. Well, post 2003, after the invasion, um, it's a parliamentary system, meaning that we have elections.
Mm-hmm.
We don't elect our president or prime minister.
Right.
We elect our parliament. We have 329 parliament members, with some seats reserved for minorities. It's actually, when you read the constitution itself, it seems like a very progressive system.
Okay.
Seats for minorities. We have 24% of parliament seats reserved for women. They have to be women, otherwise
Mm-hmm,
not qualified.
This is nice.
Um, we know you have committees, and it has all these checks and balances. And I would say it it has a couple of quirks that design it not to work in how it's supposed to have that image of a progressive society. So there are some tools they use just to completely derail all progress that could be done by the system.
Okay.
For example, a parliamentary system I think works for a multicultural and multi ethnic country like Iraq, but the problem with it is that you put these restrictions on it that since the majority are Shias
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to be ruled by someone who is not a Shia,
Mm-hmm.
they would always the prime minister always has to be a Shia Muslim.
Right.
That's not a rule in the constitution. That's just one of the quirks of Iraqi politics. That
So it's not written like
it's not written.
It's,
No, no,
it's
no.
just the way it
It's not
happens.
written anywhere. It's basically a political agreement. It's sort of, I would compare it to Lebanon.
Okay.
Lebanon is more, it's more codified than Lebanon, but the prime minister always has to be a Shia Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
The speaker of parliament has to be a Sunni Muslim,
Yeah.
and the president has to be a Kurd.
Yeah.
Uh, that's what when you assign people to those demographics,
Yeah.
you know, you prevent any sort of national cohesion from
Mm-hmm.
forming, because people are always thinking
That they're separate.
that they're separate, right? When you separate them from the get-go, you don't leave them space to actually form any national
Mm-hmm.
identity themselves. And people have actually formed a lot of national identity, despite these divisions, because the more time went on after 2003, the more people got disillusioned with the system. The
Mm-hmm.
Shias were very hopeful for a new democratic state,
I see.
where Shias can actually rule themselves and it's democratic. Got disillusioned by their leaders and by their political establishment, to
Mm-hmm.
the point where they saw the Shia political establishment as very different from the Shia populace. Now, how different depends on the time and the era, and how much people actually had faith
Okay.
in the system. It depends on a lot of factors, depending on the year, really. But I think it culminated 2019, where people sort of pushed away the sectarian identities they had for a more national identity.
Okay.
For it pushed away the ethnic identity for a more national identity.
Right.
That's, I'm Iraqi. I'm not specifically Sunni or Shia.
Mm-hmm.
I would, people back in 2019 from onwards are now more fine with the idea that, yeah, a Sunni can rule Iraq again
Okay.
without being a repressive tyrant. A Kurd can rule Iraq. A Shia can rule Iraq.
Okay.
They're trying to, at least these progressives that
Mm-hmm.
come out are trying to move away from the sectarian identity
Right.
towards a more cohesive, inclusive identity. If that
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So, from your knowledge of like politics, what would you say can be the future structure that's going to work? Just like your suggestion, your perspective, how is
I
it?
mean, are we talking ideally or realistically?
You can do both, and we can compare. I mean, up to you how you envision that.
I would say ideally it would remain a parliamentary system. I know a lot of people are disillusioned in Iraq with parliamentary systems.
Right.
They don't think it works. They think it's very bureaucratic and inefficient. But I'm very much against centralizing power in one person,
Right.
the president, that can do all he wants, and it's all right. That can do all he wants, and arrest. Just when you put that much power in one person in a country that's very heterogeneous,
Right.
that doesn't have one group that represents all of it,
Definitely.
it becomes, I mean, that's problematic throughout all countries,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
very
Yeah. Yeah.
homogeneous
Of course.
countries,
Of
right?
course. But.
But especially in countries with ethnic conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
putting that power in one person with ethnic identity, with
Mm-hmm.
sectarian identity, can at the very best isolate the others, at the very worst, get you a new Saddam.
Right.
um, I think the parliamentary system should remain. I just think that the restrictions on who can become prime minister, who can become president, who can become the speaker of parliament, the type of parties that are running should change. I'm fine really with the Islamist parties running, even though I'm not an Islamist myself. I think that they are an essential part of democracy. I think every country that has really destroyed its Islamist movement thoroughly, even the moderate parties
Mm-hmm.
like Egypt, has only become a secular dictatorship,
I see.
which isn't something we strive for anymore.
I see. I see.
You know, um, but I don't think that they should bank on the sectarian identity as much as they are right now.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Like an Islamic party should be for the. It can be a Shia Islamic party that represents the interests of the Shia Muslims, but it shouldn't be a party that seeks for their superiority over others.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Fair.
Um, I also I envision to be a more, as much as it is, as you say now, parliamentary. I envision it to be more centralized of
Mm-hmm.
parliamentary system, with one electoral law that fits all
Okay.
the all of the regions. Because
Okay.
different regions, for example, the Kurds in the north have different laws, have a different parliament.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
I'm not against their autonomy, of course. Every nation deserves their own autonomy, but I think that the way it's being done right now, it's Iraq and the Kurdish region are both being ruled by political families,
Mm-hmm.
like basically mafia states that
Okay.
control everything.
Okay.
Militias, the parliament, the paramilitaries need to they need to go. They need to be removed, and they need like you need basically a civil state that doesn't operate based on sectarian violence
Right.
and militia rule, and the army can't intervene in places where militias rule.
Mm-hmm.
Same for the militias. Sometimes they can't intervene in places where the army takes hold. and that makes you not have a state. You have a bunch of statelets
Right.
that pretend to be together but
Right.
still fight each other.
I see. I see. I see.
You can't have that in one country
Of course.
and expect it to work in a parliamentary system,
True.
right? Which I think is why people want a presidential system,
Mm-hmm.
because they want that authority,
To
they
be
want
centralized. Yeah.
centralization. But I think they're missing the point of, you also don't want to go too far in
Yeah. Yeah. Because
centralization.
they're already
Yeah,
different. Yes.
yeah. You don't want to you know, drive some homogeneity
Mm-hmm.
or drive some sort of uniformity in a country
Right.
that's very much not uniform.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and moving on from internal affairs to, let's say, external affairs,
Yeah.
like in the context of continuous war in Iraq,
Yeah.
and has lost a lot of positions on the geopolitical arena. So, like, how, in your opinion, does it shape the way Iraqi people see the rest of the world? Does it make them more close to the nation or open? What do you think?
Thing is, with Iraq in the context of, you said that it lost its
It's like
position.
I'm
Yeah.
saying that probably not the strongest passport at
Yeah.
least. So
I mean, yeah, we lost our position as a international actor, I would say, or a
yes, yes,
strong regional
yes.
actor ever since the war. I would say ever since the 90s, actually.
Okay,
But Iraq right now serves as sort of uh, a ring in the chain of the what they call the axis of resistance.
okay.
Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, to a smaller extent Yemen,
Mm-hmm.
even though well, to a larger extent Yemen, but it's less linked to that group of countries. Um, Iraq right now is more of a battle state, really, more than just a great chain. Like Iraq has both Iranian
Mm-hmm.
military installations as well as American military installations,
Right.
and these two, how do you say that? They are both fine with this. They're very much good with this arrangement because
Mm-hmm.
Iran sees it as a place where it can strike the US through their proxies and be safe, to sort of have that image of
Yeah, like
fighting the US without actually, getting itself in danger of retaliation.
right.
And the US, wants to always suffocate Iran through its influence in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And they both play this tug of war where no one really expects to win.
Mm-hmm.
They just have to expect to have the upper hand every now
I
and
see.
then.
I see. I see.
Yeah,
But it happens on your
it happens
territory.
on our territory.
So
Yeah,
how
yeah,
does that make you feel?
no one is happy about it.
Definitely.
There are minorities on both sides. I would say like there are some very ultra liberals on the. I won't call them left wing, but they're very pro US
Mm-hmm.
people in the country that think that Iraq should align with the US and kick out the foreign influences. A lot of these people tend to be sectarian
Mm-hmm.
from one sect against another because, one sect is affiliated with Iran, another sect
Right.
isn't. There are people on the other spectrum completely against it, very pro Iran, very loyal to it,
I see.
that say, Iraq should completely expel, and I agree with this view that they should completely expel foreign influences,
Right.
but they think that, Iraq should be aligned completely with the Iranian project.
I see. I see. I see.
Um, and
So
they're also against some of these also go into sectarianism, but the vast majority of Iraqis, even though I don't agree with that view mostly
mm-hmm.
or completely,
Right.
think that Iraq should uh, have its own independent boundary, have its own independent state that doesn't that expels all foreign influence, sort of isolate itself from the rest.
Right.
And people tend to lean one both sides, either US or uh, Iran, but they don't. They also tend to flip flop from time to
I
time. There
see.
isn't one view that I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
summarize people, but people aren't happy about being a battleground state. They
I
either
see.
want one side to win,
Mm-hmm.
or they want
Like a separate. Yeah.
complete expulsion
Right.
from both.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
So Iraq's constitution establishes Islam as its official religion and requires that no law can contradict Islam,
Yeah.
making Iraq a theocracy.
Mhm.
And what is in your opinion, what is your opinion on that governmental structure? Like, how does it actually affect the fact that, the government is ruled by the religion,
Yeah.
basically?
Um, Iraq and Islam have a very close relationship.
Right.
Iraq is a Muslim country, I would say.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's a Muslim majority country. Most of its people are religious,
Yes. Yes.
and they follow a lot of strict rules about their religion. But this law isn't new. It wasn't. It didn't come after 2003. I'm pretty sure it came before, since Saddam's sort of trying to hijack religion for
Okay.
popularity since the 90s. It's a very de facto, no, sorry, de jure, like de jure rule.
Mhm.
That's like no rule can really contradict Islam,
Right.
but that muddies the waters when you have multiple sects of Islam,
Yes, yes, yes.
multiple schools of thought of
Yes.
Islam
That's what I was
that
thinking.
do disagree and do contradict each other.
Yeah.
So which one do you listen to? Uh, this rule, this law only sort of establishes Iraq's identity more than its actual legislature.
I see.
We do have laws that contradict Islam. How, to what extent, to which school, that's another discussion.
I see.
How do they contradict Islam? Do they contradict or only disagree? A lot of disagreements are there. But um, I'd say it's only in name that Iraq is an Islamic state. We're still despite everything, we're still a mostly civil oriented state. Yes, we have a lot of Islamic laws that are increasing because of the influence of Islamic parties.
Right.
Um, but the secular influence and Iraq's secular identity still
Mhm.
exists. The constitution itself contradicts itself
Okay.
because it establishes Iraq as a civil secular state
Mhm.
while also Islam being its prominent religion.
Yeah.
So you have to take into account why this happened. It happened because multiple parties were writing the constitution, some of them secular, some of them Islamic.
Mhm.
So when it came to writing down everything, well, the question of Iraq's identity came up,
Right.
and you know, it was sort of as a compromise.
Right.
Iraq has some secular articles to its identity and some Islamic articles to its identity.
Right.
And I think that summarizes Iraq perfectly. It's a compromise between different ethnic groups, different
Mhm.
sects,
Mhm.
different identities, different ideologies. And that sort of summarizes all our successive governments ever since.
Right.
All governments have been compromises
Right.
between differing, at times violent, political views that sort of don't want an entire collapse of the system. So they compromise on what they can agree in the middle.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah,
Mhm.
whatever works,
Yeah.
just write whatever and we'll see where we go from there.
I see.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think when I was researching like Iraq, for me it was the main question how like in terms of the separate politics and religion that doesn't really act as a unifying factor
Yeah.
because of multiple schools. How do you operate as a country?
It's also, when you think of an Islamic state, you think, oh, something to the level of Iran or even Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But that's not the case with Iraq, not at all.
Okay.
I think that's why I say the our civil identity still shines through,
Mm-hmm.
despite a lot of religious
Right.
influences. And that's why I say it's a compromise between
Mm-hmm.
those two identities,
Right.
because none of them really wins, and you see that as a trend in Iraq. No political faction really has majority. Neither no foreign faction, neither the U.S. nor Iran. It's a
Mm-hmm.
compromise. All governments are made up of compromising but opposing political actors.
Wow, that's interesting.
Even our national identity is a compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Even our constitution was a compromise between the Kurds,
Wow.
some of them, the Kurdish parties who also wrote the constitution.
Yeah.
Some of them wanted independence. Some Islamic parties wanted to be a theocratic state. Some of them didn't, and they just came to a compromise.
I see. And just
And you see that as a trend. I think when you think of it that way, when you think of Iraq as the state of compromises,
mm-hmm.
everything starts to make more sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you think it works this way? Like on compromising, there is a way
Day
forward.
day to day, it works.
Okay.
People come to compromises because they don't want us to go into like a Syrian level civil war
Of course. Of course.
where
Of
everything
course.
collapses and
Yes.
there's outright violence. There's
Yes.
still violence everywhere, but it's not overt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is overt. That's not. It's not. The scale of it is not massive.
I see. I see. I see.
So I think that's why we come to compromises.
Right.
We just want things to. We just want to wake up tomorrow.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
And how about like in terms of other cultures, in terms of other religions? How do you see the society? Like, is society very closed in that sense, or you're fine with the rest of the world? Like, how would you say the view is nationalistic mainly, or not really?
In terms of, well, internally first,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Iraq has a lot of minorities.
Definitely.
We have a lot of Christians, a lot of there are religions you can't find anywhere else in the world.
Okay.
Ancient religions that have existed for thousands of years.
Okay.
You have formerly the Iraqi Jews
I didn't know
before some
about that.
events in the
Yeah.
70s. You had the Sabaeans. You don't hear of them. They're a very I don't want to talk about the religion because I don't know much about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
But
necessarily,
you just
yeah,
told that they're
they're
there.
an ancient religion. You have the
Mhm.
Shabak, you have the Yazidis, all ancient religions that have existed for much more than any state in Iraq has
Okay.
existed, but they how do you say this? They're such small minorities that they only make up around 2% of the entire population.
Uh-huh.
That's not
Like
Sunni Muslim or Shia Muslim. So when you um, when you see how they operate day to day, they actually live fairly well. I'm saying right now they live fairly well, as in they tend to blend in with society. They tend to coexist with the rest of the community. They have, even though it's very symbolic, they have 9 seats in parliament. 9 out of 329.
we're still
But that's proportional. You don't
true.
expect them to have more than that's proportional to their
Fair, fair.
to
Okay, the
their yeah
percentage that they
their
represent.
percentage of the population. Yeah, but there are still tensions, of course. Churches are sometimes closed or taken over by political parties,
Mm-hmm.
Islamic political parties or militias that disagree with them, and they're seized for a period of time. They give
Yeah.
it back. During the civil war in 2006, 2011, um, most Baghdadi Christians were expelled from their
Mm-hmm.
cities. A lot of minorities were ethnically cleansed, and that trauma hasn't been recovered from.
I see.
You
I
know
see. I
that
see.
those issues haven't been resolved really. People just sort of got over them. Those who survived and now coexist.
Mm-hmm.
Those who didn't, womp womp.
Uh-huh.
That's those are my view. That's how people see it.
Yeah, yeah,
Or at least the Islamic Party see it. They don't want a reconciliation. They simply want these things happened.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's hope they don't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't want no one wants to take responsibility for what happened to the Iraqi Christians or the other minorities who got expelled or exiled or killed. But even though that happened to all sects of Iraq, even Muslims were the majority that experienced that.
Uh-huh.
So I would say they exist, like they coexist right now, but there is a large trauma that hasn't been
I
resolved,
see. I see. I see.
a recent trauma that still affects them. In terms of
External. Yeah.
internationally,
Yeah.
like when we get a lot of tourists right now, not a lot, but much more than we used to get before,
Right.
because tourism has been opened in Iraq.
Right.
And I would say that it's actually very, very safe for tourists to come.
Mm-hmm.
I know multiple people who run tourist companies, and you can go to really any part of the country.
All right.
Even I wouldn't recommend going without an Iraqi, but you can go, and you're probably gonna be fine.
Right. I see.
Um,
So like yeah.
yeah, don't quote me on that, but go with the tourist. Go with the tour company. You have more fun.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like Iraq is much more open right now than it was in the years before, and it's still opening up to new areas, to new populations. Like we don't discriminate based on who the tourist is. We're actually
Yeah.
very happy to see people even visit the country,
That's really
and
nice.
see people, yeah, people are very sweet towards tourists usually.
So you would say like the country is in the process of opening up, which means that like
Yeah,
in a few years to come, you can even go safely without a
yeah.
tourist guide because it means that
Hopefully,
the
hopefully,
people are going to accept the
hopefully. I mean, I remember in the we had like a small regional tournament called the Golf Cup,
okay.
right? It's a football tournament. It
Mm-hmm.
was held in Basra, southern Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the Peninsula Arabs or the Gulf Arabs came to Iraq for the first time in 40, 50, 20 years since the war, really. A lot of them were surprised that, yeah, it's actually very safe.
Right.
You don't need protection to come here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the image Iraq has been trying to project, that the war is over,
Yeah.
the wars are over, plural, and now it's time for rebuilding and progress and prosperity and everything. Despite our internal issues, you can still come visit and have a
Right.
good time.
Right.
Yeah,
So in terms of international community, there seems to be a positive tendency, right?
the, at least that's what we're trying to portray.
How do
Yeah,
you
the recent war has put a spanner into the works.
fair? Yeah.
Things aren't going as smoothly, but the Iraqi state trying to ignore that completely.
Uh-huh.
No, that's not the image we want to project, at least for sake of purely tourism.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. I see. Okay. Okay. So, in terms of culture, let's talk about culture. Iraqi culture traces back to a Mesopotamian rich
Mhm.
culture and heritage. So, tell me more about what is, in your opinion, makes Iraqi culture unique.
I would say that we again, when I told you our identity is a compromise between multiple
Yes. Yes.
things,
Yes. Yes.
that's still the that's still the fact here. Iraq, I, I don't want to I don't want to maybe offend the other Arabs,
But you
but
speak from
yeah,
your
but
perspective.
I speak for
We have
myself.
your perspective
Iraq
here
Iraq
today.
I think is in terms of dialects, the Iraqi dialect of Arabic, which is very distinct,
Right.
is the closest at least between all the dialects to standardized Arabic.
Okay.
I think there was a study that found that 10% of Iraqi Arabic is congruent with standard Arabic, which sounds like only 10% is very low,
But
but
then
that shows you how the other dialects completely deviate.
I see.
Yeah, I think some dialects were 2 or 3%.
Right.
I mean, like congruence, not just in vocabulary, but in how we speak and how how we articulate the language itself,
Right.
and how we pronounce certain letters and words. But I wouldn't say the Arabic identity is our whole identity. Yeah, Iraq is an Arab country,
Yeah.
but that's a
But then you have a
compromise.
lot of, like,
Iraq was mostly Arabized.
Right.
Arabs had a presence before,
Mm-hmm.
but that presence, they weren't the only people there.
Yeah.
Iraq is a country that was ruled by Persians, ruled and inhabited by Persians, Turks, Chaldeans, Akkadians, Sumerians.
So many.
How many? Yeah, how many Kurds? How many you go back in history?
Yeah.
You can name countless peoples that have lived here and spoken different languages.
Right.
So even in our dialect that we speak every day, we
Mm-hmm.
have words that are from Kurdish, and the
Okay.
Kurds too have words that are from Arabic.
Right.
In Arabic, we have words that are from Farsi,
Mm-hmm.
from Turkish, from even I don't usually take these claims. They're very dubious about ancient languages.
Yeah.
But some people even claim that we have words from Akkadian or Sumerian that have simply persisted. Small words here and there. Yeah, that don't exist in any other dialect and don't
Yeah.
exist in any other language,
That's
but
true.
they do exist according to them
Mm-hmm.
in the Sumerian or Akkadian scripts.
Right.
We even have words that we just came up with completely on our own.
Fair enough.
I don't want. Yeah. Again, I don't want to state one certain word
No, I
because
mean,
every word has its etymology disputed.
fair.
There's one folk etymology that's actually not true, but like folk etymology is basically a word that people think its origin is one thing,
Uh-huh.
but it's completely made up.
I see.
But it makes
I
sense,
see. So
right?
people just made
So
up.
yeah, one word is rice.
Okay.
All Arabs call rice either ruz or aish, one of those two words.
Mm-hmm.
Iraq is distinct. We call it timman. Now,
Who's right?
people say, no one is right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Rose is right. Rose is the standard one, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But people say that actually it came from the British colonization, when the British used to bring pounds of this British rice
Okay.
from a company called 10 Men Rice,
Okay.
and 10 Men slowly became Timmen.
I see.
But that's again, people like to dispute that so much, and
Okay.
there are whole arguments about no, that's
I
actually not
mean,
how the word came
yeah,
to
that's
be.
kind of
Yeah,
too
but
simple.
shows you how that one word that we have distinct from everyone else.
Yeah,
There are thousands of words like that in our
I
language.
see. I
Yeah.
see. No, yeah, that's really interesting.
So yeah, I'd say that even genetically we're not homogenous.
Mhm.
Iraqis. I have friends that are as blonde as you, or I have friends that are as Asian as any Hong Konger here.
Wow.
You know, but again, it's a compromise. It's a
I
compromise
see. No, it's
identity.
such a mix.
Yeah,
That's really
it's
interesting.
because we've been ruled by so many civilizations.
Right.
All of that just sort of comes in. Even our national identity. We say, oh, we're an Arab nation that we take pride in Al-Muthanna ibn Harith and Ali ibn Abi Talib and all those Arab Muslim rulers who
Okay.
came and ruled and really opened us to Islam and the Arab world. But then again, we do still take pride in that we're the first cradle of civilization,
Right.
predating Egypt. Um, like we have much less connection to it than the Egyptians. You
Mm-hmm.
can say the Egyptians are genetically connected to the pharaohs, which factually we are not. Right? Factually, we're a mix of many different ethnicities,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how we view ourselves, really.
Right.
And people tend to lean one or the other way. People tend, no, I'm fully Arab, no, I'm fully Kurdish, no, I'm fully this or that. I think the Kurds have a better claim to
Like more.
complete link because they've had a clear record of living in their land for thousands of years,
Right.
more than the Arabs. But and they haven't been Arabized really. But everyone else in the south and center
It's like
is a complete mix. Yeah, you can actually tell.
that's really interesting. Okay, so let's get more personal. Like, tell me three your favorite traditions that you can recall from back home. It can be in terms of food. It can be in terms of, like, celebrations, whatever you missed in Hong Kong.
I think that maybe it's something I do here. I try to do it when I got some good news about universities or whatever. Whenever you get good news,
Okay.
you are expected. You're not, it's not an obligation, but you're expected at least. You expect yourself, no one really tells you to do it. You expect yourself
Yeah.
to just bring a lot of sweets, something that's, and just give it out,
Ah, I see.
celebrate
I
with other
see. I see.
people,
I
right?
see. Okay.
And that exists in other cultures, of course. That exists in, I think, Turkish and really most Islamic cultures.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a nice way to make people happy with you. You know, they might not be happy as happy as you for the news,
But you're
whether
nice.
they're happy about getting the sweets and the gifts that you're
Yeah.
giving out. Um, Another thing is, a lot of it relates to food and giving, but I think that you always dispute who pays. At least you try to pay
Okay.
for.
Okay.
And again, that's a very Arab thing generally, and a very Middle Eastern thing.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I feel weird when I'm eating with people. I'm like, oh, I'll pay, and they just say yes. Like, no, no, that like, yeah, I was going to
Of
anyway,
course. But then
but
you expected someone
I
to.
expected the back and forth. You know,
I see. I see.
I remember one time I was hanging out with a friend's family here,
Yeah.
and they said, "Oh, we'll pay," and I said, "No, no, why would you pay? I'll pay." And of course, I was willing to pay. Like, that's not
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
point. I am fully willing to, that's why I exist in the first place. I don't
Yeah.
just say it and expect you not to, not to take me up on it. But you don't just give it up like that,
Yeah. 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 You're gonna
Like,
fight for it.
yeah, exactly. You gotta fight for it. And sometimes even when someone offers to pay and I can't pay,
Yeah.
I still give them some fight for it. I know they're gonna. I know for a fact they're gonna pay in the end.
Okay.
But I still make them feel as if, oh no, I appreciate you too. I'll pay
Mm-hmm,
anyway.
mm-hmm. No, that is interesting. That
Yeah,
makes me think of yeah. Many things, honestly, many dinners I
exactly,
had.
exactly. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if it's sort of rude to just leave and not even offer to carry at least half of the check or a
Right.
part of it, or even offer to just a symbolic offer,
Right,
even
right,
if you
right.
can't.
But it's just yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like even back home, when you buy like you're at a restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
a local restaurant, you buy some street food, you buy a falafel or something.
Yeah.
It's, there's always a phrase they say, which is like "خليها علينا," like no, no, leave it on us, don't worry. And I've never seen anyone say yes. Okay,
Really?
yeah, never. Because it's something you grew up with. Like, no, no, that's just part of the transaction of, okay,
This is pretty
he
cool.
says no, I say yes, and then I give him the money, and then he
I,
says, no, 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 no. Are you sure you have the money? I'm like, no, no, of course, don't worry about it.
that's
And I give him, that happens with taxi drivers.
uh-huh.
That happens with even some mid-level restaurants. The fancy restaurants, of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's a level of decorum, no,
Right,
no,
right,
of
right.
course
No,
you're
I
willing
mean
to
of
pay.
course,
Yeah,
but where
yeah.
yeah, it's
But
possible.
local restaurants and taxi drivers and every service that's very
Mm-hmm.
personal. Sort of, you see the person, you look
Yeah,
them in
yeah,
the
yeah.
eyes
You
as
can
you make
talk.
their food. No, yeah, you're expected to just say, no, 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 don't worry about it. I'll have it.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I wanna try honestly. Saying yeah, yeah,
No,
sure.
as a tourist, like here's the it would be rude if I took them up on it. It would be like considered rude if I no no oh yeah sure don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have it, okay. But as a
Right.
tourist, we don't expect you to pay genuinely. Like sometimes people will
Don't
go out
make
of their way.
don't make those claims, cause
And no, no, I am gonna make those claims. I've seen them happen in real
oh,
life.
right, okay.
Like store owners will refuse to take money from tourists
Wow.
because most of the stuff you buy is very cheap anyway. Like
Mm-hmm.
what sandwich that's worth a dollar.
Mm-hmm. So you can have it.
Yeah, you can just have it.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
about hospitality more than anything.
I see. I see. That's pretty cool.
A third tradition, I don't love it,
But it's there.
but it's there,
Place.
and it's very very interesting. It's very misogynistic, but it happens in my family. Like there's a story that will say that like it happened more than 100, around 100 years ago. It's very old.
Right.
It doesn't happen anymore. It's a tradition,
Mm-hmm.
It's dying off as it should. It's a very bad one.
Okay.
It's when someone has a funeral, right? Someone has died, maybe your father, your brother, someone close. You have to have this thing that's it's very tribal, at least to my region of the country. That's we call the break of sadness.
Okay.
Once the 40-day mourning period is over, you come back to the person who's mourning if they're close to you and you want to give them something,
Mm-hmm.
and you give them a gift.
Okay.
A gift that's like to break your sadness. A gift that's supposed to be a celebration, maybe.
Right.
Maybe your child was born on that day and you name them after them.
Oh. Okay.
And you're like,
Okay.
oh,
Okay.
now we celebrate the child instead of celebrating the
That does.
my one of my
I'm not ready
see
for that.
this is very yeah I'm not gonna get into this. One of my great grandparents, very old man, died in the 50s, right?
Mm-hmm.
His father, I think his father who died at the time,
Yeah.
and he to break the sadness, one neighboring tribe gave him a wife. Yeah,
Just like that.
just like that,
Wow.
to break the sadness. And now instead of celebrate, now instead of being sad over a funeral,
Yeah, you
you're
have.
happy over a wedding.
I see.
You're celebrating a wedding.
Hmm.
The celebration has died off, but it shows you really, it's a very Arab tradition. It shows
So you
you,
would say like it was a repetitive after
it,
that,
it
like
was it was repeat,
giving a wife as a
yeah,
present.
but it's even even then it was only given to people of like high moral standard, of like people of high social standing.
Yeah.
You don't just give a wife to anyone, you
Okay.
know,
Okay. I see. I see.
obviously. But it has since died off completely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it exists anymore, but still a tradition that's like in our, at least in my family, sort of very tribal
Mm-hmm.
Bedouin background culture.
Yeah, I see.
And it really it shows how giving is really more important than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I read this book one time about Iraqi or Bedouin culture. It was by one of Iraq's most famous sociologists called Wardi. I, I mention his name with a bit of reluctance
Okay.
because a lot of his theories were very crazy.
Okay.
He is not credible at all.
Okay.
But that one book he wrote was good, in my opinion.
What is this one?
It says that he basically in the book he has a study of Bedouin culture. He says that a Bedouin likes to be asked for something
Uh-huh.
or give it away as a surprise to get a like a visceral reaction to
Mm-hmm.
increase his view as this very giving and very kind and very
Uh-huh.
generous person,
I see.
right?
I see.
But he doesn't like to just. But he himself, the Bedouin, doesn't ask for something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because he sees, I will never beg, I'll never ask for something. He likes to be given.
I see. I see.
So that tradition sort of symbolizes this. The person who's mourning doesn't like to ask for something to break the
I see. I see. I
sadness,
see. But like
right? He
expect.
expects it to be given to him,
I see.
as a gift.
I see.
And the person who gives it doesn't like to sort of prelude it with, do you want?
Just.
Because it sort of decreases the
Mm-hmm.
value of the gift itself,
Uh-huh.
whatever it is.
I see. I
If
see.
it's an actual person
Mm-hmm.
or if it's a material gift. So he sort of gives it out immediately, and both sides are happy with that arrangement.
All right. All
Both
right.
view themselves as the superior
Okay.
giving
Mm-hmm.
partner and the most kind, or the person who receives this views himself as the most generous
I see.
and the most deserving of
I
it.
see. I see.
So it sort of it reflects that mentality of it,
That's
you know,
interesting.
that,
That's
oh, nothing is above your value to
no,
me.
no,
I'll
no.
give
I
you my
see.
own daughter,
I
you
see
know.
the.
Yeah,
No, but I see the
no,
point
yeah,
there.
you see
Yeah.
the rationale behind it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So based on your
it's a
experience,
dead tradition. I have to say that
yeah.
it's a dead tradition. It doesn't exist anymore. No, no one will give you a wife anymore.
Well,
Anymore.
let's hope nobody's sad
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. It died. I think I like to think it died with my great grandfather. I
Okay.
haven't heard of anything happening like that ever since.
Right. Okay. I see. So based on your experience, what would you say makes Iraqi people unique from other nationalities?
I guess it's a mixed identity.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit with an Iranian person and talk about our shared sect or our shared religion or our shared sometimes our shared words or
Mm-hmm.
even our shared history. Iran and Iraq are very linked
Right.
in terms of history. I can sit with any Arab and talk about our shared language, our shared history together, and our shared faith and our shared culture. You can sit with the Turk. You can sit with. That's why I think it's so easy for me sometimes to learn about neighboring cultures,
Mm-hmm.
because you sit with other people and you instinctively, like, you immediately have to share something with them. Something from your identity aligns with theirs, right? And I don't think that's true for most other Arab countries.
Right.
That's what distinguishes us. Like, Arab regions in the east, you have the Levant,
Mm-hmm.
Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine. You have the peninsula, all the
Mm-hmm.
peninsula Arab countries, and Iraq is on its own. It's neither that nor that.
I see.
It exists in its own sphere because it's been in between so many spheres.
Mm-hmm.
It's between the Turkish sphere, it's between the Levantine sphere, it's between the peninsula sphere, it's between the Persian sphere, and all of those,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of we just have that overlap of all. Like, imagine a Venn diagram, and
Yeah.
Iraq is in the
Okay. In the
middle of all
middle.
the
Uh-huh.
circles. Yeah, so that's how I imagine it. That we exist
In the
in that overlap. I think that's what makes us so unique. We have, for example, one of our most famous dishes, falafel.
Mm-hmm.
We eat. It's a Levantine dish made in Palestine that we imported over,
Mm-hmm.
and we also mix it with an Indian condiment brought over from Iraqi Jews,
Uh-huh. Okay.
right? That in the 1920s, that dealt with British companies to import it overland from Persia.
Iraqi, so
Exactly.
and
Like
then
even
comes
even
together.
something as simple as that doesn't have just one origin.
Right.
It has to be mixed
I
through,
see.
like it has to go through multiple layers
Wow.
to actually reach us,
Okay.
right? Because again, we exist in the overlap of so many cultures
Right.
that yeah, we lean towards an Arab culture. We're mostly an Arab country. At least the Arabs in the nation are
Mhm.
mostly Arab, but we still have our quirks that come from being exposed to so many different areas.
Right.
I think that's what makes us so unique. That mix.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm actually curious then, what would be one word to describe Iraq for you? I mean, it's a hard one, but
Yeah. I would say diverse.
diverse. Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. Even the people who look exactly alike think nothing alike. Yeah, I've met two brothers who. I mean, it's a sad story, but in the Civil War, you would have two brothers who were completely on opposite sides of each other, and that shows
Mhm.
you that even where we are homogenous in some areas,
Mhm.
even then we completely different identity and thought because each person is exposed to a different part of that overlap
I see.
that then may take over their thought and their mentality and their thinking, right?
Mhm.
Even people living in the same household, in the same community, may be exposed to different parts of that community. I grew up with, I mean, I live in central Baghdad, in Karada, in
Mhm.
this very diverse place. It used to be mostly, it used to be half Christian. Ever since the Christian influence has been much less.
Okay.
But you know, I still went to school, or at least went to classes next to churches. I used to pass by every day.
Mhm.
Um, I used to go and you know you'd meet Armenians, you'd meet Chaldeans, you'd meet Sunnis and Assyrians.
Yes. So many.
Yeah, almost every single ethnicity that has inhabited this land still exists, and they still permeate their culture
Wow.
somewhat.
Okay. So to finish it up, how do you see yourself in the future in terms of Iraq?
My link towards the country.
Yes. 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 I mean, we're speaking in an
Yeah,
international school right now, so
yeah.
it's
I mean,
interesting. How do you view yourself in the?
I think a lot of people who leave their country, especially in the Middle East, have this aim to come back one day,
Yeah.
and I'm one of them. I don't want to leave forever.
Yeah.
I don't see myself as leaving and settling in some foreign country and immigrating and getting a passport and applying for asylum.
Yeah.
And
Like forget about
no,
it.
no. Maybe work for a couple of years,
Yeah.
but I always intend to come back sooner rather than later. Hopefully after university
Right.
to you know to this is a very volatile time for Iraq. I want to build something in that
Mhm.
volatile time. Things are very as rigid as they are, as strict as society is. There's still a lot of legway,
Mhm.
you know, sorry, a lot of leg room for you to move and change things. Things are still very fluid. I think I want to take advantage of that,
Right.
build something that sort of changes Iraqi society in some of its social aspects.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I always intend to come back. Next 5 years, I see myself as being back home.
That is great.
Thank
That is
you.
really great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you so much
I appreciate
for
you.
having me. Yeah.